Now, the question here, death through Adam, life through Christ. Romans chapter 5. Therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man. So somebody sinned. There must have been a law that one man sinned against, and I believe this is speaking about Adam. So there must have been a law before Moses' law, because sin entered into the world, and where there is no law, there is no sin. So what law is being talked about here? Therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, and in this way death came to all people. Let me just scroll down a little bit here, right? Therefore, sin entered the world, right? To be sure, sin was already in the world before the law of Moses was given. So there must have been a law that was in force. There must have been a law before the law of Moses. And I'm trying to hold this, okay? But to be sure, sin was in the world. To be sure, there was sin before the law of Moses. So there must have been another law. But sin is not charged against anyone's account where there is no law. So there must have been a law. Nevertheless, death reigned from the time of Adam to the time of Moses. So there must have been a law between the time of Adam and Moses. Paul is very clearly saying that there was a law before Mosaic law. Okay? Even over those who did not sin according to breaking a command of Moses. It's very clear the context here is speaking about that there was a command before the command of Moses. See, nevertheless, death reigned from the time of Adam to the time of Moses, even over those who did not sin by breaking a command of Moses, as did Adam, who is a pattern of the one to come. So there was a sin, but Adam didn't sin according to Mosaic law. He sinned according to another law, the fruit of the good knowledge of good and evil, when he sinned in the garden. And that's why he died. Because the context here is telling you that there was sin in the world because Adam died and people were dying all the way up to Mosaic law. So sin was being counted against people, okay, even before Mosaic law comes. So this is what these passages mean, and this is the context of what they mean, and somebody seems to be saying that I'm taking them out of context. But if you read back in Romans, you see, at just the right time when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. Did he die for everybody? He died for all ungodly people, not just the Jews under Mosaic law. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous person, though for a good person someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So basically, when it talks about there being a law and God reconciling us from sin, he's not just talking about the Jews who sinned according to Moses, but according to everybody who was a sinner by the sin that was imputed to Adam and Eve. Now, I don't know what Mwilson's view is on this, seeming to say that he's speaking about something different than what Paul is speaking about, especially since when you go back to the context of what Paul's talking about, the promise that comes by faith, it was not through the law that Abraham, his offspring, received the promise. What is Paul talking about? Now this is back in chapter 4. It was not through the law of Moses that Abraham and his offspring received the promise that he would be heir of the world, but through the righteousness that comes by faith for Jew and Gentile alike. It's very plain that this is what these scriptures say. But it seems to me that Mwilson has made a video saying that no, this is not what was being talked about. It was something else. But if you read here, if you go back to Romans chapter 3, it's very, very clear what Paul is talking about. And just read Romans all the way up to Romans 5. What advantage then is there in being a Jew? Or what value is there in circumcision? Much in every way. First of all, the Jews have been entrusted with the very words of God. what if some of them were unfaithful? Will their unfaithfulness nullify the God's faithfulness? Not at all. Let God be true and every human being a liar, as it is written, so that you may be proved right when you speak and prevail when you judge. The Jews were unrighteous too. But if our unrighteousness brings out the righteousness, God's righteousness more clearly by showing that they couldn't follow the law to get to heaven, what shall we say? That God is unjust in bringing his wrath on us? I am using a human argument. Certainly not. See, Paul is talking about no one being righteous. What shall we conclude then? Do we have any advantage? Not at all. For we have already made the charge that Jews and Gentiles alike are all under the power of sin. So when you go to chapter 5 and it says that there was sin in the world before Moses, it's very clear that it's talking about that there was a law before the law of Moses, and there is no one righteous because there was a law before the law of Moses. It's very clear. But now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been made known, to which the law and the prophets testify. This righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ. Very, very clear. This righteousness is given through Jesus Christ. There is no difference between Jew and Gentile, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified freely by his grace through the redemption that came by Jesus Christ. Now, you understand here that when you read the context of this, unless you're going to let Mwilson tell you what it is, it's very, very clear that the context here is that there was no difference between Jew and Greek because all of them were under sin, under Adam, and that's why it said very, very clearly that death reigned before Moses. And so, so when it says, therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, and we skip down, you see that it says, since we have now been justified by his blood, how much more shall we be saved from God's wrath through him? And it says, therefore, just as one man just as sin, which means there's a law, entered the world through one man, and death through sin, and in this way death came to all people because all sinned, Jew and Gentile. Okay? This was talking very clearly that there was a law that was in force that condemned people before Moses. Very, very clear. But so in other words, when it said nevertheless, death reigned from the time of Adam to the time of Moses, even over those who did not sin by breaking the command of Moses. They sinned by breaking the command that was already put on them when Adam ate the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, as did Adam did, who is the pattern of the one to come. Adam is the pattern, not Moses. Adam is the pattern. Adam is the one that sinned first.